So, in continuation of my discussion in the previous lecture, we have taken some more case studies not only from India, but other countries also, and then try to identify and conclude the kind of trends that is happening, especially on the front of change management in Indian companies. So, we will take up some more cases of change management and then try to look at the major current trends and the kind of changes that is going on and what is the future of change management in Indian organizations. So, that we can conclude the session. So, we have taken another case which is known as Bharti Airtel, which is basically a business which is a combination joint venture of Bharti and Airtel. Actually, the Airtel is a company from the Bharti. Now, if you look at the kind of diversification, growth and development that is happening in Airtel, you can see that how they have been able to change their services to provide better quality services at lower cost to the customers, and that was their motto. Now, in when the company was established in 1996, they started basically mobile services under the brand name of Airtel. It was actually launched in Delhi and Himachal Pradesh. So, they had only 2 circles. In 2001 something like that, after 2001 they actually go for initial public offering. It was a first 100% book building issues. Then in after 2003 it became the first wireless company, telecom company with pan India footprint. It is not only limited to Delhi and Himachal. Then later on actually it launched mobile services in Sri Lanka. It also launched direct to home telecast services. It had a 70% stake in Warid Telecom, Bangladesh. It acquired China Africa, BB, launching entry into Africa. It launched 3G services in India. Now, it has that it has launched even 4G services in India. Then they also expanded African operations to Rwanda, right. They acquired 49% in Qualcomm India, launched 4G services in Kolkata, Bangalore, and Pulo. Then again they have launched this IPO of Bharti Infrastructure Limited. Now, if you look at the kind of development that was happening, so they were trying to expand and diversify them. So, this was the kind of strategic change which the company was trying to bring in Bharti Airtel, right. So, they you can see that to start with they try to look into expansion and growth the Indian market to start with. So, that they could become the largest telecom operator in India. They also try to go for expansion in other countries like Sri Lanka, Africa, Rwanda, Bangladesh and other countries. And on the front of technology also they started with 3G and now they are moved to 4G and they are also planning to go for 5G in near future, right. And you can see that along with this expansion in other countries, a third thing that they did was that they went for acquisitions, like they acquired Warid Telecom Bangladesh, Jain Africa BB and also the Qualcomm India, and they are in the again they are going to acquire some other companies, smaller companies which are not doing well, so that they can consolidate and strengthen their position. So, the 3 kind of strategic changes that was there, that mergers and acquisitions, expansion to the foreign markets and also strengthening their position by offering better technology services, especially in the IT telecom sector. So, you can see that how change management was happening at Bharti Airtel, right. So, the kind of model which they were using is like this. Okay. So, they were trying to improve affordability to give positive elasticity, right. So, the kind of things that they were doing is like trying to see the cost, affordability, positive elasticity, how much they can move up in that direction, increase the uses of the products and services which they are offering, and then trying to develop economies of scale. So, since profit margin is less, so they try to increase the value, so that they could make up the profit, and this resulted in improved profitability, right. So, the focus on producing the lowest cost minute while maintaining growing margins, which was a big challenge. I mean, today it is a big challenge in telecom market. So, but Airtel is a major player, you can say, in this telecom market today, especially in Indian context. Another factor which drive change was affordability. So, that they have more users and more uses both. So, they can increase the customer base and all customers are going to make use of their services as much as possible, and this is what we call a scaling of the minutes, which is going to drive the operating leverage. So, if there is more uses of the company services, it would increase the operating revenues of the companies, and that is why they launched this program which is known as Minutes Factory to move towards a high usage environment while building its customer base profitably. So, this was the motto which basically allowed Airtel to go for changes, and that is how they have if you look at the scale, the users and uses have gone up, and they have been able to achieve what you call economies of scale, resulting in improved profitability, right. And improved profitability again you can say leads to more affordability, right. More affordability means providing services at lower costs. Now, if you look at this, they also try to a part of their strategy, they also try to build partnership, right. So, they try to build partnership with Nokia, ZTE, Ericsson, Huawei, IBM, lot of companies, especially they try to provide call centers and customer services, then distribution, retail outlets that they have, right, and then towers, passive infrastructure. Because towers are required for circulating, say then you can see that how the basic activities that they carried out, especially through this strategic partnership, include like networking management through these companies. Then how they took partnered with IBM for IT outsourcing. They also acted as customer services partners, call center partners for a lot of companies like Nortel, Cisco, Wipro, Infosys, TMT. So, there are a lot of companies had partnered with Airtel, so that they could so that Airtel could provide them call center services, customer services, right. So, if you look into this strategic partnership, Airtel were also doing well and try to perform well. Then we are moving to a third company, which is a manufacturing company, which is known as Aditya Birla Group. Now, if you look at Aditya Birla Group, the kind of change management which was happening, it was a huge scale. Now, if you look at Aditya Birla Group, you know that is a Indian multinational Indian company, which operates in 36 countries. It is a big company. It is a global business leaders in aluminum, pulp and fiber, carbon, cement and telecom, life insurance, apparel, retail business, and they have been growing exponentially since last 1 decade you can say, and its employees base is close to 1,30,000 currently, which comprise 42 nationalities with an average age of 37 years. So, even if you look at the demographic trend, that is also very positive in terms of the kind of businesses where they have diversified, starting with manufacturing to services to life insurance, even in apparels also. Now, what happened actually with the Birla Group? So, what kind of forces were the driving forces which went for the change? So, these are the imperatives, like they were actually working in a very highly intensively competitive, high voltage or a high volatile business environment, which was driven by the global forces. So, they tried to understand what are the implications of the change in the business environment, so that they could quickly formulate effective business solutions depending upon the context in which they were operating. So, they could look into the context, the internal and external environment, and see what kind of changes that they could bring to the business, so that they are able to compete in a competitive and volatile business environment, right. Moving further, if you look at managing change at ABG, so what they did basically, this is what we know as ABG way of change management, where they try to look at the people vision, what people are looking forward to, and how they are going to manage their change, and what kind of key principles that they are going to adopt for the changes, right. Now, if you look at this, the kind of activities they got engaged in, especially under people management system and practices, they started with learning and development activities, where they try to provide opportunities for learning and development, and so that people could grow as mature professionals. They also try to have a career development system in the organization, so provide opportunity to build and fulfill career aspirations for the employees, right. Then reward and recognition to ensure that they are appropriately recognized and rewarded for the commitment and contribution. And finally, they could enrich their life, so that they can take responsibilities and could reach a more balanced, healthy work life. So, on the people, this is the kind of vision which they had for the people, right. Now, coming to the next part, that managing change, they adopted a 8-step process, and if you look at this 8-step process, it is close to what Kotter has talked about the 8-step stages. Right. To start with, they talked about what kind of opportunities are available for the business. Then they try to understand the internal currents and undercurrents which were going on within the business. Then try to assess the change, what kind of change they need to bring about in the business, and then they try to involve and commit, and that at this point basically they have to look at various stakeholders, employees, to see that how to get them involved in the business and how they are going to commit to the changes that they want to bring about, and then they try to implement the changes. And on the path of the implementation, if they found that there are certain things that need to be refined or modified, they also went for this, and then they try to make sure that through this review and implementation they are going to stay on course. It means that they are making progress as defined in the timeline, and but at the same time they also try to be flexible. So, if something is not happening, right, so that they could take corrective actions in terms of goal posts and the deadlines which they had to meet the intended change. Then also communication was a very important factor. So, they devised communication strategy, they communicated with the stakeholders to ensure that they are able to win their confidence, they are able to reduce their resistance level, and whenever they were succeeding, they also started celebrating. Like we remember, we talked about celebrating short term wins. So, each and every goal post, if they are able to make it, then they started celebrating, so that they could win the game, and ultimately they try to institutionalize the change that was proposed to start with. So, now if you look at all these stages, through these stages they try to see that how change is going to happen in ABG. You remember, we talked about 3 way of changing, right. That was people vision. So, this is related to what we call the people vision. What we had just discussed, the 8-stage approach, that was related to management of change, right. Now, what we are going to talk about the key principles of change management. Now, if you look at the key principles of change management, it is like this. So, these are the core principles which are followed by Aditya Birla Group, so far as change management was concerned. So, to start with, they had to challenge the status quo. It means that whatever status or situation, the current situation is not viable, not good for the business in the long term, they need to change. And another principle was that there was no change for the sake of change. So, this it does not mean that you are going to change if it is not required. If it is required only, then you go for a change, right. And then build change into our way of thinking. So, let it be a part of the culture of the organization, so that you are able to transform themselves, right. So, they try to build a culture of change, so that people start thinking, it becomes a part of their value and norm, that yes, we need to change ourselves constantly, okay. And then we congruent, authentic and persistent. This is basically related to top management. So, the top management need to ensure that their line of thinking is matching, is aligned with the people down the line. They are authentic in approach, so that the credibility is established, and they must be persistent, because sometimes the change is not happening. So, they not lose the ground, and ultimately change at a pace people can take. So, you are not going to change either very fast or very slow, but depending upon the capability of the people and how people are going to take up the challenges of the change. So, depending upon the pace that people can make use of, the change was happening. So, what we discussed in case of ABG, that how the business was growing and what kind of steps was taken and what kind of principles that they have. So, they basically try to focus upon the process of the change, they try to focus on the people, and they all adopted certain principles for the change management, and that they gave them the good result. Now, what we have discussed cases of success. Now, we will also discuss some of the cases related to the failures, and you remember about the Kingfisher Airlines. So, the first case I have taken here is rise and fall of Kingfisher Airlines. You know that it used to be the second largest airline in terms of carrying the number of passengers, and people actually used to talk about the quality and comfort that was provided by this Kingfisher Airline in terms of their services. So, the passengers were very happy, in fact, regarding the quality of services, the comfort which was provided by the airline to the passengers. Okay. And then in 2007 actually it acquired Air Deccan. So, in 2009 more than 9 lakh passengers flew with Kingfisher, giving it the highest market share in India, even compared to Indian Airlines, Air India. By 2009-10, it accumulated the debt of over 7,000 crore as the loss continued to pile up. 2010 was the year when it turned into a non-performing asset for bank, right. So, now you can see that the company which was growing very fast, what happened to it and why they were not able to make profit in the long run, and ultimately it became bankrupt, right. So, you can see that the three factors that were identified were lack of delegation. So, most of the decisions were taken by the top management, they did not have any trust on people down the line. Then another important factor actually which was responsible, that low cost airline Air Deccan was treated as stepchild. Okay. They did not treat them well, I mean, and that was one of the reasons that they could not succeed, and unnecessary burning of the fuel, that is another factor. And one most important factor that happened with Kingfisher Airlines is they were supposed to compete with low cost airlines. So, ultimately if you look at the needs and expectations of the customers, they were not looking for quality and comfortable services at higher costs. So, cost was an important factor, and when the competitors in airline services came up like Indigo, Jet and other companies, they tried to provide services, reasonably good services at a lower cost, then they started losing their business, and that was one of the reason that, and they did not change, right. And this happened with Kingfisher Airlines, and that is why you can see that the change when the acquisition that they had taken over Air Deccan did not result in good business for them. So, it could be considered as a case of failure. Another case that I have taken is Kodak. Okay. You know that Kodak was a company which was well known for its cameras as well as films. Culture of innovation change, which started in 1988, right, and it had a dominant position in photographic film. Its tagline Kodak Moments was used for even promoting events. It had 90% market share in 70s. It also created the first digital camera in 1975, but what went wrong with Kodak? What happened actually, they did not do the marketing for the digital camera like other competitors which were there in the market like Sony, Nikon, Fujifilm, and they took advantage of the situation, and that was a reason that Kodak could not do well. Okay. So, since they had developed this digital technology to start with, they did not improve on that account, okay, and they even were in the denial mode about the digital photography. So, they did not move to say analog to what you call digital technology. So, far as photography was concerned. As a result, in 2012 it became bankrupt for not making the smart move into the digital world fast enough. And on February 2009, February 9, 2012, it announced that it will exit the digital market, digital image capture market. Since it was not able to improve and innovate itself into digital market or digital photography, it could not survive the market, right. So, again I am taking another case which is well known as Nokia, right. It was one of the best phones for making the first GSM call, right, in 1991. They also launched 1101, the first GSM handset, and became an instant hit. In 88, it was the world leader in mobile phones, and its share grew to 74% in 2006 from 61% in October 2005. See how fast it was making business and how growth and profitable the company was. But what happened? In color phone category, its share jumped from 59%, from 40% to almost 60%, right. Now, they used to own a large market of smartphone before the iPhone came into the market. So, iPhone was the major competitor in the market, but the Nokia refused to change and learn new things and lost their survival, and this ultimately led to their demise. So, if they are not going to continuously improve and innovate in themselves, this is what is going to happen with the companies, and that is why you need to change yourself depending upon the requirement, and for that you need to scan the external environment, to identify your customers, you identify the kind of products and technology they are offering, and then you need to compete with them. So, ultimately if you look at the basic reason of why Nokia failed was they failed to respond to the completely changed smartphones with full touch screen and application based operating system. and most of the companies today that we have like Samsung, Apple, they are our competitors. And ultimately what happened, that Nokia was acquired by Microsoft in 2013, and they have again started making smartphones, but they are yet to make their business and presence felt in the market. So, now if you look at the stories that we have talked about, success stories and failure stories, this gives you an idea that why change is required and how we need to effectively implement and manage change successfully, so that we are able to compete in the market, right. So, now we are going to conclude this by identifying what are the business trends which have driven change in Indian organizations. See, the big size companies, venture capitalists and global consulting firms, they are driving the business today. So, you need to compete with them. Mergers and acquisitions are having lot of changes in the organizations, right. It is increasing at a phenomenal scale, and that is also going to counteract competitions. Virtualization of organizations to promote more effective organizational survival. Incidence of customization, manufacturing as well as services, we are going to provide better customer services by offering tailor based products to them. Then product life cycle, as you know, is going shorter, which requires more R&D so far as technology is concerned. Then in terms of structure, you have to see that most of the companies which had bureaucratic structure are trying to dismantle them to expedite decision making process. Now, the lines separating different businesses are also getting blurred as technology and market are converging, and this has led to the new opportunities for the growth. Then talent to deliver high degree of performance. You need to see that people capabilities are matching to bring about the change, and then effective people management and change management strategies need to be adopted by the Indian organizations, so that they are successful. Moving further, if you look at the change dynamics in Indian organizations and the kind of steps that Indian companies have taken, yes, they have now I appreciate these factors that yes, they need to change in the changing business environment. They also need to critically examine the awareness that yes, we need to go for a change and look into the change process, that how to go about it, and they have also recognized the multiple dimensions of change. Multiple dimensions, that one change does bring lot of changes. So, you have to see that how one change is going to affect other issues. Then they need to develop systems and processes to promote the desired changes. Decides who is likely to play the role of change agent, whether it is going to be change management or tag teams or change agents. Then they also need to develop a change program, including interventions to be used, like you see in many cases you see that lot of interventions were carried out at the people management front to ensure that the change is successful, because ultimately it is the people who are going to implement the change. Like in Aditya Birla Group, they went for managing people, that was the first step. Then you also go for managing and reviewing the change management process on a regular basis, because the kind of change that you are carrying out may not be enough. So, you need to review and monitor the progress of the change that is happening. So, after looking at the change dynamics, we are also looking into some of the research observations, especially those who have been carried out in the field of research change management. So, if you look at I am not going to provide give you the references, but you can see the major points that is coming out, like different mechanisms are prescribed with which facilitate change management. These are the studies which I have carried out and found out this. Another set of studies have found out yes, that successful change management requires effective leadership and also sensitization of the top level executives. Third, institutionalizing and internalizing efforts are essential when attempts to bring about the change. Another study said that yes, trust building and belongingness for the employees and establishing a high performance orientation is important. So, these are some of the observations from the research which is related to research change management, especially in Indian context. Another study found that cultural change which actually was carried out in State Bank of India, which resulted in change, and it was because they had faced competition from the private sector. And when you look at the public sector organizations like Indian Railways have also experienced a major reinvention, okay, and they are going for a change in the business models, culture and leadership. So, a current survey which was carried out in 2018 found that nearly 30% of the company in India are ready to adopt change management practices. And according to a survey by the change management solution firms. Now, if you look at these observations, they basically complement what the companies are doing, and it is very important to understand that if you want to change, then you need to bring about a change in various dimensions. That is why we call it multiple dimensions. It means the kind of mechanism you adopt. Leadership is another important issue, institutionalization is important, trust building, belongingness to employees is another important issues, cultural transformation is another important issues. You also need to bring about a change in the business model, right. So, these are some of the observations which have come from the research. Now, what are the based on this we also try to compile the kind of changes which are happening at the workplace, especially in the context of Indian organizations. Now, you can see that the one change which is happening in most of the organizations is structural changes, where the delayering is happening, right. You can say right sizing or downsizing is happening. From individual we are moving to team working, right. So, these are the structural changes which are happening in the company, it is obvious. Second, the working pattern, right. There is increased use of short term contracts, part time working, predominantly women, with many people having 2 or more jobs, working at one or working at from the office or from the home. So, you can see even the working patterns have changed apart from the structural changes which are happening. Then if you look at the workforce characteristics, it is also changing due to declining birth rates and increased longevity. So, even the average of the people in work has increased, and there is a diverse workforce also in terms of ethnicity, values and gender. So, these are the changes which is reflected in currently in most of the organizations. Then workforce skills has also changed. Requirement of the workers to learn new skill in line with the changing technologies and the competitive environment, and the employment choices, increasing self employment and working in small organizations, it has gone up now. So, that is what you call say that many people are going for their own businesses, what you call self employment. So, these are the changes which are happening, right, at the workplace. Moving further, Boston Consulting Group has suggested certain tips for the leadership. While you are going to keep people at the center of the stage, what matters is these things, right. Leadership at the top management, which has come out from the studies and the various examples that we have taken up. Design for the scale, what kind of change you want to bring, instrumental change, incremental changes or radical change, or we are going for turnaround. You need to try to make it as simple as possible, do not make it complex. Move fast and adopt the changes that you want to have. Drive frequent communication. So, communication is another pillar. Then use technology and data, because that is going to help you to solve your problems. Now, if you look at these issues, you can say that Indian companies or any company can get success if they are going to adopt this, while keeping people at the center of the stage, because it is ultimately the people who are going to execute and implement the change successfully in the organization. So, this is the strategy which could be adopted by the Indian firms for corporate transformations. So, they need to look at the management systems and also the change situations. At the management system especially, they need to look at the performance management system, the value added design, they need to see that kind of structure that they have, it facilitates effective performance. They also need to go for change in IT infrastructure, managing good relationship with the external stakeholders, and follow change management practices. Then the kind of change that they need to bring, they need to go for sometimes radical changes, okay. Need to shift to self managed teams instead of individual working, and they need to change their structure. So, along with this, they also need to identify tools and techniques, how they are going to measure the impact of the performance. So, they need to use certain criteria like performance metrics, value added metrics, so that they are able to diagnose the changes which are happening in the organizations, and they need to see that they are going to carry out implementation exercise very meticulously, so that they are able to implement the changes, right. And finally, you have implement induction, that is whether you get the support of everybody in the organization, critical mass of support, whether people have a problem orientation, that is we need to solve the problem or not, how you want to manage the program, and what is your focus, who is at the focus, whether it is customers or something else, right. So, if this kind of model is adopted or this kind of strategy is adopted by the Indian firms, probably they can go and transform their organization. And finally, we are going to discuss paths to change in the future, right. Since lot of changes is happening, this requires changes and has implications for the organizations like demographic changes, No, because of demographic changes, since increasing the number of women employees, right, shift in the product and services depending upon the needs of the customers, right. So, all these points have to be taken while they are going to develop products and say processes, right. Similarly, if you look at the changing lifestyle of the people, which is associated with the housing, transport, IT, environmental issues, expectations of health systems and relieving illness and contributing to longer lives. So, this is also an input you can say which will have implications when they are going to develop products, services and technology. Then occupational changes are happening, especially in the people are moving from agrarian economies to manufacturing, even to services economy also, and ultimately they are moving to a knowledge economy. Then changing employment practices are happening, changing nature of psychological contract, increased demand for flexible working, social and corporate responsibility, and finally, operating virtually. You know that nowadays most of the companies are operating virtually, which are open 24 hours. So, this is the influence of working class continents, increased mobility of the employees. Now, if you look at the implications of these factors, this call for a change in the product, processes, technology and services which companies are going to provide, so that they can meet the expectations because of the changes which is happening in the environment. So, they need to see that these kind of things are going to happen in the future and it has implications for the organization, and accordingly they are going to develop product and processes, so that they can successfully compete in the market, and for that they need to see that what kind of changes they need to bring about in future in order to meet the challenges which is going to be created by these changes. Okay. So, with this actually this week what we have covered is, to start with we talked about turnaround strategy, we see how we can measure effectiveness of the change. Then we see that how these changes converge together and provide some kind of learning experiences, and finally, we have taken some examples of change management practices and try to identify the trend and dynamics of change in Indian organizations. So, with this we are going to complete. I hope that you have enjoyed it or you are going to enjoy this, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.